Hello, junkies, and welcome to another Friday Fix. We have another author interview. We're here for San Diego Comic-Con. I'm always here because I live in San Diego, but it's Comic-Con. Today joining us is Jason Hough.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
And we're going to talk primarily about, this is the book that's coming out? Is
Yes,
that correct?
that's right.
Zero World.
Zero World, August 18th it comes out.
Great. Now, those of you who watched our last interview with Pierce Brown, I read those books, Red Rising and Golden Sun, have not read Zero World yet, so we're coming at it from a different perspective.
That's fine.
But so you're here for Comic-Con. Have you done
Yes.
Comic-Con before?
Oh yeah, I've been coming to Comic-Con since 85,
Okay.
1985. So I probably missed a few in the 90s, but pretty much every year since 1985.
And how many books is this out? Is this book number one, book number two?
That is my fourth book.
Fourth book.
The
So
other-
you've been to Comic-Con to launch books before? Or?
Just once,
Okay.
because my first three books all came out over one summer 2 years ago. So,
All over one summer. Okay.
Right.
So those were all done, and then those were Del Rey books?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were the names of those?
that was the Darwin Elevator.
Oh, right.
The Exodus Towers and the Plague Forge.
Okay. So was that, people always wonder about that. Like right now I'm in the middle of a live, and
Yeah.
I've written book one's done,
Yeah.
coming out in a couple of days. Book two is in final edits. Book three I haven't even started yet.
Sure.
So they think it's going to come out a year from now. Book three, I'm like, I'm not really sure about how that's going to work.
Right.
So with your first three books, were they already a finished trilogy?
No, I actually had the first book done, and that's what we took out on submission and ended up selling to Del Rey. And they bought it as a trilogy, almost without even asking me what I had planned. They just said, we want 3 books.
That's what they want now these days.
Yeah, and so I had to sort of scramble to plot and outline the next 2. And then I started writing those, and I turned in the second one early on purpose to give myself more time to write the third book.
Okay.
And when I did that, in a way, I shot myself in the foot because they said, oh, well, maybe you can turn in the third book early too, and then we can just release them all together. It's the same strategy they did for Kevin Hearn and Naomi Novik, and it worked really well for them.
Right.
So they basically pitched me on the idea of doing the same thing with my books.
Now, the Darwin Elevator got some critical acclaim. Kind of came out of, it was like, hey, everybody, here's a hot new author, new thing.
Right.
Before we get into Zero World,
Sure.
give us a quick overview of the Darwin Elevator trilogy.
The Darwin Elevator is about an alien race has built a space elevator without explaining why. They've just basically given us one, and it connects to Earth in Darwin, Australia, hence the name. So we don't know why it's there. We don't know who built it. We start using it, and then this disease starts to spread across the world, and it's turning people into these sort of primal, very emotionally messed up beings. And anyway, Darwin ends up, people realize it's a safe zone. Like for whatever reason, the disease is not affecting anyone as long as they're within about 10 kilometers of the elevator, the space elevator. And so the books follow a handful of people who, for whatever reason, they don't know at the time, are immune to this disease. And the books start as they start to finally unravel why all this is happening and who's doing it to us. And
So kind of a different take on a post-apocalyptic island type
yeah,
culture.
yeah. I wanted to do essentially I wanted to do a post-apocalyptic Earth with a sort of almost utopian space society, but they're connected together and they rely on each other for survival, basically.
Okay. Was there, what was the impetus behind this one? Was there a moment, space elevators, I find that concept pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So you take that very interesting thing and then combine it with this. Was there a genesis moment for this, or is this an idea you've been working on for a while?
Yeah, I keep this like spreadsheet of ideas, and every time I get a random idea, like a space elevator story or whatever, I just throw it on there and kind of forget about it because I'm usually working on something. And then once every 6 months or so, what I do is I load it up, I randomize the whole thing, and then I read it through to see if anything just connects in an interesting way. And most of my stuff has come out of doing
So like
that.
you've got your own digital story flashcard,
Right.
Shuffle them up, come through,
Yep.
and go potatoes and spaceships.
Exactly.
That works. And now we're on to Zero World.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us about Zero World.
Zero World is sort of a more near future story. It's about an assassin who is tasked with finding this scientist who appears to have fled through a wormhole to an alternate Earth or a parallel Earth.
Okay.
And she's taken with her essentially the sum total of human knowledge on a flash drive, like all of our patents and Wikipedia, not exactly, but you get the idea. And she's appears to be using that knowledge to set herself up as like the most powerful person on this alternate Earth. It's about 100 years behind us technologically, so pre-space age society. But it's And so he's basically sent in to try to find her and stop her from sort of messing up this other world, because it's our first contact ever with not just other life, but it's other human life. It's a planet that appears to be a geological clone of Earth, like continent-wise and everything. It's exactly the same or close enough. And so that's where the story starts. And, of course, nothing is what it seems. And
Things get nutty.
Yeah, things get nutty. But the high concept is probably James Bond meets Inception is what reviewers are saying.
Okay. So a really dominant aggressor, a very talented main character who's a high-priced assassin, kind of spy kind of thing?
He's got an interesting twist where he has an implant in his neck that releases a biochemical marker into his brain and sort of stores a steady-state version of his memory at that moment. So at the beginning of any mission, they do that to him, and then he goes and does his mission. And then at the end, they can basically release his previous memory state back into his head. So he essentially forgets everything that happened.
Oh, okay.
But he still completed his mission. He just doesn't know what he did or why. And he sort of he's been doing this for so long now that he just lives his life basically content with not knowing what he actually does. All he knows is he's good at it. And he spends his time when he's not on missions training himself and trying to become better at what he does. And the only reason he knows he's successful is because they tell him so. But he has no recollection of
and with most stories along those lines, at some point, do these memories start to leak out in here, or is he
not exactly
remains in a perfect weapon?
For the most part, yeah. I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, it doesn't. It's not like suddenly it all starts to unravel or doesn't work or whatever. But there is a pretty cool twist that goes along with this implant and how it works.
Inception meets James Bond.
Yeah,
very cool. And is this beginning? It sounds like a series franchise character.
It's funny because when I first started it, I saw it as a standalone book. And then as I was writing it, I started to think it would be cool to do, I'm really like spoiler conscious, so I don't want to reveal too much, but I saw that there was this opportunity to kind of have a series of standalone novels set in the same universe, sort of like what Ian Banks did with the Culture books.
Okay.
Where you could read any one of those on their own, and you don't need to have read the others. But they are all set in the same universe and tell stories that are somewhat related to each other. So then I started to think, well, I'm going to try to do something like that. And I think that's still what I want to do if the publisher is cool with it. And so far they seem to be on board with that idea. But it did end up, the ending is more of I wouldn't say it's a cliffhanger, but it's more of this story ends and there's the obvious link to what will happen or where it could go next.
So related novels in the Hough-verse, but not you have to read these 5 books to know what happens in book 6.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. That's my plan.
Yeah. Well, that's a general approach to what I do with my stuff too, is it's all in the Sigler-verse. And is that any kind of reaction you had to putting out a trilogy, or is it just you like all different things?
Honestly, so first of all, just to make it clear, this is not related to the other trilogy.
Right.
So when you say Hough-verse...
I see, completely separate.
Yeah.
This could be the start of the Hough-verse.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so no, I think what happened was I wrote that trilogy. I would have been more than happy to just continue writing more books in that series. But after they came out and they did well and we got critical, success and all that, they basically, because they released them all so fast, they wanted to do another contract, but they didn't necessarily need to have a 4th book coming out soon because there was already 3 that had just arrived.
Okay.
So they said, let's give people time to read those and grow a fan base or whatever. So in the meantime, what else you got? And so, but they just wanted to pick one other thing to do in between. Going back to the previous series.
So this was already in process?
No, I had to, off the top of my head, I had to give them a menu of ideas, basically.
Was it one of those email pitch letters like, sure, I got a pitch for that. Let me go find it.
In a way, it was funny because, so we had this call and they were like, we want to do more, but we're not ready to do more Dire Earth yet. Let's wait. That's the series title for the Darwin Elevator in this book, the Dire Earth cycle. So give us some other ideas. And because we want to have something else out while we wait for those books to build their fan base, to keep your name out there. And as they kept saying on the call, that we want to build your sci-fi like cred and brand or whatever, right? So I go back and I go to that idea spreadsheet I mentioned and I sort of mine it for my favorite ideas from it. And I write them up as like 1 page each pitches.
Okay.
And then before I sent to them, I sent to my agent, I said, does this look like what you think they're asking for? And she said, yeah, this is great, but there's no there's no sci-fi on here, and I didn't even thought about it, that everything I gave them was like either fantasy or like, you know, just modern techno thriller type stuff.
Okay.
But on that call, they had kept over and over again, they had said this, you know, sci-fi, you know, brand or whatever. And so at the last minute, I went back to the spreadsheet and just took my favorite sci-fi idea off of it. And so everything else was a one-page pitch, and then this one was 2 sentences. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's the one they said, yeah, we like that. Let's do that.
That's the one I like. Excellent, excellent. Tell me about any influences that go into this. Obviously, James Bond meets Inception, so it's a bit of a shoot 'em up. But is there any? You've got your idea spreadsheet. I want to do this.
Yeah.
Then you start to manifest this. When you start to get into character and theme and pacing of the book, what do you dial in to achieve the effect that you want? What effect did you want, and what did you use to dial that in?
Right. So the initial idea had nothing about espionage or whatever. It was purely just that part about the scientists going off to this world with all of our knowledge.
Okay.
And then, so as I started to work it out more, I thought, you know, sending somebody after her to stop what she's doing would be an interesting way to tell the story. And so at the time, my wife had given me as a gift the entire James Bond collection as a Blu-ray box set, and so I had this idea to watch them all in order, not of when they came out, but of the book publication order. And so I did this series of blog posts where I read each Ian Fleming novel and then watched the corresponding movie and then kind of compared them and talked about what they changed and how it, you know, the series went in a different order than the movies, and you know, I just thought it was interesting. And then. Around that same time, I was coming back from World Fantasy Convention in England. I was at Heathrow, and I just tweeted to see if there were any other authors on their way back to the U.S. who were waiting at Heathrow who wanted to just hang out. And I don't know if you know Tobias Backel, but he happened to be in the airport at the time, and we both had like 3 hours to kill. So we ended up sitting there and eating ramen and talking about Korean action cinema somehow. We just got on that topic, and it's just something we both kind of geeked out about basically for a while. And then it was on my flight home when I thought that it would be kind of cool to make the main character a Korean, model him after Korean action stars, basically. And so that's sort of where the main character came from. And that's when everything kind of started to gel in my head.
So is that a Gestalt thing or any particular character or movie, actor or movie you dialed in?
The funny thing is I had the idea, and then I went home and watched some of the movies that Toby recommended that I hadn't seen. And
do you remember what those were?
The name is going to escape me now, but it's the Man from Nowhere.
Okay.
And so after I watched that, I was already starting to write at that point, and I just immediately went and got the best, like high-res image of that actor in one of the action scenes of that movie, and I left that as my desktop background the whole time I was writing the book. To just whoops, I think I just tapped that.
No worries.
And so I just used that as sort of my just a constant inspiration in the back of my head. I don't like to model my characters after a specific actor too much or a specific person. I like to sort of pick and choose personality traits from different places. Do you do that? Do you do that a lot? Do you have different visual references, or is it just the one background picture? It depends. For this case, for this particular character, I use the one background picture. But for like settings and things, I'll go and grab tons of images or whatever it happens to be, and I won't necessarily be having them like sitting there all the time for reference, but I'll use them when I'm doing the world building, and then I think when I'm writing, I tend to not look at them too much. But, you know, unless I get stuck or something.
So you sound kind of like a database-driven guy. You've got your spreadsheet of ideas. I imagine you've got some kind of folder structure. Okay, I'm now writing about this mountain scene. So you call up the mountain, etc. Is that pertain to the day job, the old day job, or tell me about your background that got you into the writing? Yeah,
I guess it does. I didn't think about it, but I used to be a game designer, and so writing a game design document is essentially world building.
Okay.
But includes all the game rules and everything. I suppose I did carry a lot of that over into my process. My process, I feel like, is evolving as I go, but I am more of a planner up front than just doing everything by the seat of my pants.
What were some of the games?
The most well-known one was probably called Metal Fatigue.
Okay. And your role with that was more of the writing side, I'm gathering, from the world building?
Actually, I was what's called a game designer. So I wasn't writing like dialogue or anything. I was writing down the rules of the game. I was describing the levels and the characters and the weapons and what their stats were. It was probably similar to writing like a a player's handbook for Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. As you move into fiction writing, is that what you always wanted to do while you were doing the game design? Were you working on books at the time, or just like wake up one day and like, hey, I'm gonna have Cocoa Puffs and write a book?
What basically happened was I was designing games. I got out of that industry for a lot of different reasons, which we don't need to go into, but I just needed a creative outlet again. I was back into a sort of a normal corporate, boring job, and I just needed something to do to get my creative juices out and onto paper or whatever. So I thought about all the different things I could try doing, and writing seemed to me like the one that I would have complete control, not only over the product I was eventually going to create, but in terms of just how far I took it. I wouldn't be relying on anybody else. Like if I wanted to make short films or something,
right,
I would need actors and editing help and sound effects and all that. I could only take it so far as the team could go, I guess. At least that's the way I looked at it. And so writing just seemed to be something where I could try it, I could do it at my own pace, and if I wanted to take it far, it would only be limited by my own energy and all that.
So you kind of looked at that, want to be creative, but then I'm my own guy, I want to do my own thing, control my own, and that moves you into novels.
Right. Yeah. So I just started writing. Initially, I didn't know really what medium I wanted to write in, I suppose. I tried a novel first. It was sort of just a throwaway. It was actually a romantic comedy. And maybe someday I'll come back to it because I still think it was kind of fun. But
just make it a romantic comedy with lasers.
Yeah, that's all I need.
And then you're rolling.
Some spaceships.
Yeah.
But that was just my first practice novel. Fine, I set that aside, and then I did like 3 screenplays. Again, I'm just trying to feel like what I like to write. Is it novels? Is it screenplays? Is it something else? I actually enjoyed the screenplay stuff quite a bit, but then I went back to trying another novel, and this time I had a stronger idea. This ended up being The Darwin Elevator.
Okay.
And so because that sold, I just haven't looked back. Basically, just novels are my thing. So
that's great. That's at least from my experience, that's fairly unusual. Second book gets picked up, which is awesome, and then you get rolling from there. And the screenplay thing, do you go back and dabble in that, or are you just so busy now trying to satisfy the demand for books?
Right. I'm busy enough now that I haven't had a chance to.
So that, of course, brings to with the interest in the books. If these are to get turned into any kind of a movie, is that something you want to control yourself? We had Pierce Brown on the show a little while ago, and he was able to write at least the first draft of his screenplay, and then they turn it over. So at least he has a shot at it. Is that something you're interested in?
If any of these do go that route, my attitude is I'm happy to be as involved as they'll let me be. And so if the opportunity is there to write the first draft of the script or whatever, I would jump at that. But
that's not something you're going to fight to the death.
No. I mean, again, the way I look at it is if they've got this brilliant screenwriter who's all ready to do it, I'm more than happy to just let the expert, do their thing. Right. And I'm here to help however I possibly can. Cool.
And then, so this is out in August. And what are you working on next? What's the next big thing?
The next thing is still early, but it's 2 more books in the Dire Earth series, so the Darwin Elevator series.
So the trilogy becomes 5.
Well, it's actually going to be written as a duology that takes place. They follow up those first 3 books, but the first one of these 2 will be a sort of an entry point into the series. It's written so that someone could start there if they wanted to, because the story that it's telling is different enough.
Are they interwoven or just also set in Darwin, et cetera?
No, this is going to be more of a space opera.
Okay.
So it's the same characters, the same main characters, but they're sort of off on a new adventure now. So,
And any plans on when those are scheduled for?
I think, so we're still debating if we're going to do the quick release thing, like release the 2 of them a month apart or something, or if we'll stagger it more traditionally, 6 months or a year. But I think we should see the first of those 2 next fall. And then the question is how long after that the follow-up will be.
So this, you're not driving around a Lamborghini yet.
No.
Not just yet.
No.
But still, write a book, write a couple of screenplays, write a second book, get that published. And now you are, all of these books coming out, you've got work lined up in this space. Yeah. How does that feel to you? Did you have any envision that it would happen this way, or did you just wanted to write a book and all of this is like, well, this happened and okay.
Yeah, I didn't expect any of it. I wrote the first one, The Darwin Elevator, and just I got it to the point where I felt like I wasn't really improving it. I was just changing it. And so I decided that was the time where I need to find out if this is actually quality or if it's just the best I can do and that's not good enough. And so I started sort of looking at agents and made my list of the ones I thought were a good fit for me, and decided to just query the first one on the list and see how it went. And she ended up signing me. Oh. So, and then
There's so many people watching this who are going to want to punch you right in the mouth. They want to punch you in the mouth.
I'm on a panel last year. First time I've ever been anywhere in the same vicinity as Jim Butcher and Jonathan Mayberry. They're sitting next to me, and this story comes up how I got the first agent I went after. She sold the books to Random House like a few months later.
Right.
And so all of it happened super fast to me. So I'm telling the story, and I look over at them, and they're both just doing this. And Jim Butcher's shaking his head, and he's like, "I hate you."
Yeah. Well, I can't. I hate you too. I'm not going to lie.
In the best possible way.
But this is really cool. This is a really cool backstory. Everything seems to be rolling along quite nicely.
Yeah.
And you get, without having set up any, it doesn't sound like you set up any specific goals as far as getting the book published or expectations.
No.
You're sort of just along for the ride in what's a lovely fairy tale of publishing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing it full time now, and that was sort of unexpected. I just assumed I would be doing it as a hobby. Even if I got published, I thought it would still be a hobby for years and years.
Right. But, which it is for most people, but you're able to pull the trigger and go full time with it.
Yeah. I mean, it required kind of rejiggering our lifestyle a little bit and moving and stuff. But, we got to the point where we can make it work, and I can do something I love. And it means I'm home when my kids are in this pre-kindergarten age. I can spend a lot more time with them. And so it's been great.
And at least is there a sense of striking while the iron is hot? Well, shoot, people are paying me for these books. I'm going to get as many of these books done as I can. Because that was when I went full time. There was this general attitude of like, don't know how long this is going to last.
Right.
We need to grab as many minds as we can get out there and get books out and get things working. But it doesn't. You're able to settle on one book and focus on that and not worry about that.
I am. I guess it could just be because I'm not as business minded as I should be. Okay. But in terms of just my own, I still feel very new to this, and like I'm learning what my limits are and that sort of thing. And so, writing one book at a time, taking about a year to write a book is the pace that I'm comfortable with. As long as that's working, that's fine with me. And I may try, when my kids are both past kindergarten age and they're out of the house during the day, I may try to take on doing, 2 books at a time or just writing faster or whatever.
You don't want to get in diminishing returns where you're writing stuff that you're just going to throw out anyways.
I could probably spend another 4 hours, but I'd only get maybe an hour's worth of quality writing out of that time. So I just feel like, I'll stop where I'm comfortable and then go play with the kids and build Lego spaceships and goof off with them.
That's a good gig. Yeah. What did you do? I built some Lego spaceships.
I do, yeah.
But they were romantic comedy Lego spaceships.
Right, with kids and pirate ships and
lasers. Please don't forget the lasers.
I'll try not to.
Seriously.
Let me make a note, actually.
Everything should have some lasers in it. All right, Jason, thank you for coming on the Friday Fix.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Again, the book is Zero World. Zoom in. And that is out August 11th?
18th.
August 18th?
It was the 11th, and then they moved it a week.
August 18th.
Yeah.
Okay. And where do people find out more about you?
JasonHough.com. It's Hough. That's how it's spelled. And everything's up there.
And also on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Jason M. Hough, and I'm on Facebook with just Facebook.com/Hough.
Okay. Junkies, go pick up Zero World. Looks great.
Thanks.
Talk to y'all real soon.